Welcome back to the No Greater Joy podcast, brought to you by the pastors here at Grace Baptist Church, because we want for our people what Jesus wants for his people, and that's to know greater joy. And we want them to be able to know greater joy by stepping into the areas that we are convinced bring no greater joy for God's people than being a 24/7 worshiper, a go person, and an alongsider. I am Pastor Steve Strong, lead pastor here at Grace, and once again to my right we have
Associate Pastor Andreas Bailey.
Across from me,
Ryan Adkins, serving the Timothy position.
and a huge thank you once again, Dan Kraniak, the tech guru, producing this and really making it awesome. Hope to have as many guests as we can to this, and just talking about these different areas, being a go person alongside 24/7 worshiper. And I'm excited to have Brian Gardner with us. Pastor Brian has been at New Community for lots of years and is no stranger to our people at Grace. Really is a joy to be able to partner with them in a lot of different ways, and which is why we wanted to partner with them a year and a half ago. Maybe not quite a year and a half, but it seems like a long time ago, in March of 2020, when the pandemic was hitting us, and it was a no-brainer to work with them. And so, Brian, really glad that you are with us. Thanks for joining us, man.
Glad to be here.
So we started off March of 2020, partnering in the services, the Sunday services, and had a theme that we were kind of trying to zero in on, and it was this idea of God's not going to waste this pandemic, so let's not waste it either. And spent almost 2 months, maybe 3 months, just kind of exploring that. And so now that things are opening up again here in Ohio, and whether this is a good thing or bad thing we can talk about, getting back to normal, we thought we would revisit this idea of, all right, what are the top 3 lessons that we've learned coming out of COVID? As individuals, maybe as a church. But before we get to that, want to know a little bit more about you. So I think Ryan has a great question. We were talking earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you kick us off?
So, Brian, a lot of our people know you, whether it's from our combined services, July 4th in the park, or having seen you on the live stream last year when we kind of combined our services. But I don't know that a lot of our people know your story or the story of New Community, or, what has been your path to ministry, your path to this area, and really your path to New Community as you guys are today.
Okay, so I grew up in a ministry home. My dad was a church planter with Baptist Missions. Came to Christ at a young age, about 5 years old. When I was 18, I was trying to figure life out, and thought I would go into medicine. I had a scholarship to a university in the area we were living, but I knew in my heart my motivation was really about making big bucks. It wasn't really about being altruistic, serving people, or any of that. And so there's this internal battle going on inside of me. As part of that, I wound up going to, at the time, Baptist Bible College, and trying to figure out how this was gonna channel out. I was in that process when God brought a guy into my life who really discipled me. Growing up in a ministry home, nobody really ever discipled me. They just always assumed where I was spiritually. And this guy just asked me in-depth questions about my own walk with God, about things I was struggling with, about what my thinking was as far as where God was leading me with my life, what I was willing to give up. He was only in my life for one semester, but that one semester really made a big difference in me, and it really deviated me from sort of my own selfish path to being able to think broader. Okay, God, what do you want to do with me? At the end of my sophomore year, I met my wife, wound up about that same time, I kind of began to feel like, okay, God's moving me to ministry. And so I stayed there as opposed to transferring out, which was my original plan. I'm just going to come here, transfer out. go somewhere else and study pre-med. Wound up at the end of college, going to Baptist Bible Seminary. After my first year of seminary, Sharon and I were married. At the end of that seminary program, we were sent to Elyria, Ohio, which I didn't even know how to say it. Is that Elyria? What is that town?
El Ria.
Yeah, exactly. And doing an internship there. Sharon had done her student teaching there years earlier, but they didn't even recognize who she was because she was married now, different name. And we wound up in Ohio. There, worked with a guy who was really passionate about church planting, and Dan Simmons. And he would ask me on a regular basis, Brian, have you considered church planting? What do you think about church planting? Hey, what are you interested in church planting? Exposed me to a lot of church, and I'd grown up around it, but it was very different. I'd grown up a whole different sector of it. And so we got to the end of the internship, and I began to just pray God about different ideas, different positions that had kind of come across my path. I just felt like God was saying, I want you to take a step of faith. So we were back. Sharon grew up on an apple farm. We were walking on the farm one day, and I said to Sharon, I think God's pushing me to take a step of faith. She said, you're thinking about church planting, aren't you? And I said, yeah, what do you think? And she's like, if that's where God's leading you, I'm in. And so we did demographics all over Ohio. We did demographics elsewhere in the United States. Sometimes people ask me, if you could start a church anywhere, why did you pick, a cold climate like Northern Ohio? But this is where God put us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we approached Brad Quick, who was at the time pastoring there. Hey, what do you think of this idea? And God put together 5 other couples that shared that vision as well. One went on to Arizona and is involved in church planting out there. One went on, started a church down in Strongsville, and then eventually moved on out from there. But so those other 3 couples are still with us to this day, and they're a huge blessing in our
Very
lives.
cool.
And so yeah, that was 2000 we started. I thought if you'd asked me back then if we would have our own building by now, I would say, oh yeah, totally. Which is kind of an interesting whole journey in and of itself, but we're working towards it. One of these days, I think I'm on the Abraham plan. I may be 100 years old, but there will be something eventually maybe that we'll have our own location or place to hang out. But it hasn't been all bad. God's used that too. And so yeah, we've been with New Community over 20 years now, and it has been the greatest joy of my life. It has also been at times the greatest challenge of my life. It's been the highs and the lows, but we've by God's grace, we've seen Him do a lot of things in people's lives, and people come to faith and grow in their journey with Christ. And so I wouldn't change it.
Amen.
But and then, boy, I think I don't want to say it was like 2009. We did the first winter retreat with Grace, and that really started a process of getting to know Grace, getting to know Steve, you guys as you've come into the picture, and realizing that there's a really kindred spirit with this church, and that we share a lot of similar things philosophically, a similar heartbeat. Our congregations have mixed well. Our kids get along well, and it's been a mutual blessing. And so when the pandemic hit and we had nowhere to hang our hat and didn't know what we were going to do, and you guys invited us into that process with you, it was a huge blessing. I want to say thank you to the family here at Grace. We appreciate you. We consider you our extended family. And for those 2.5 months we spent together, it was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
It was fun. We grabbed the whiteboard and did a lot of brainstorming back and forth, and sometimes we walked into services kind of, wondering, okay, how's this going to go? But we were able to, I think, do things that, in the end, I think both of our congregations were benefited.
Yes, absolutely.
By that. And so anyway.
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
Regarding just for kind of whoever's listening, who's only ever been in a church that has a building
Yeah.
to attend every Sunday, what is it like for you guys on a typical Sunday?
Yeah.
What is it like during the week? Kind of what are the big differences you would experience?
So we're very decentralized, And in a sense, that's a blessing. We never have to explain to our congregation that the church is outside the walls of a particular building. They get that because so much of what happens in our church happens outside the church walls. So our small groups, all those things, our youth ministry happens in a place in Avon Lake. It's crazy. And when we want to do extra things, it can be a challenge because you got to find a place to do them. But we show up 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. Our worship team starts setting up. Our other ministries start 8:15, 8:30. They're coming in. They're getting things set up. We have 2 buildings on the Lake Ridge campus that we use. The Betcher Center, which is where our adult worship is, and then our kids ministry happens in the next building to it. We set everything up. When church is done, we tear everything down. And it's improved. I mean, early on, we packed everything in my house. Every room in my house had something for the church in it. We had a U-Haul that we'd load that thing up. And in my mind, if I saw a U-Haul on Sunday morning, I would think, oh, look, they're starting a church. That was just the natural thing that would go through my mind. Then we advanced from that to a 1974 retrofitted Stroman bread truck. It was this massive door that opened on the back of it like the Ark. It was hugely heavy. Everybody lost blood in this truck, and that was crazy. And then we went to another truck that somebody donated, and then finally we had on-site storage, which was actually a huge blessing. We don't have to do that anymore. So yeah.
Cool.
So you as a church, how old are you then?
We're about 21.
21 years old.
Yeah.
Some of your highs then?
Oh, our highs are definitely those times when we've seen people come to Christ. And those have happened in waves in our church. So typically where, we've seen sometimes it's 4 or 5, sometimes it's been or 12. I mean, you just see these waves of people that have come to faith, and then you've got all these baby Christians walking around, and that can be a little crazy. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like walking by your nursery on a Sunday morning, you hear a lot of screaming little babies in there. And sometimes new believers aren't much different. Yeah. But, and they take a lot of time and energy, just like little babies do. But then as you watch them start to grow and watch them start to develop, and you see them light up when they get into the Word of God, one of the things that energizes me as a pastor, and I'm sure it's true for you guys, is when the light bulb goes on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a believer who's catching something for the first time or an unbeliever who's coming to faith, those are so exciting. And just one real quick story. Years ago, we had a guy that he was coming into town visiting his fiancée at the time, and every time he'd come in to visit, she'd bring him to church. And this went on for months and months and months, and he was hearing God's word, he was hearing the gospel. I could just sense God's moving in this guy. So I invited him out to breakfast one Saturday morning. I said, hey, let's go to breakfast. We sat down, and I said, Charlie, you've been coming, you've been hearing the gospel. Are you wanting to make a decision for Christ? And before our order was taken, he's like, oh, yes. And before our order was even taken, he had accepted Christ that morning. Oh, great. And it's those kinds of stories, the woman that at the time, they didn't end up getting married, but they were seeing each other, and my wife was discipling her, and one day she came to her discipleship opportunity, and the book of Ephesians was missing from her Bible. And maybe it was Philippians. I can't remember which now, but anyway, the book was missing. I think it was Ephesians. And my wife said, hey, let's go to this verse in Ephesians. And she's like, I don't have it anymore. And she's like, well, why not? She says, well, this was such a great book. I cut it out and I gave it to my friend.
Awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
And to me, that's just the kind of stuff that
That's
just
cool.
energizes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got tons of questions running through my mind, maybe things that we could talk about just in terms of, I think for us as a church at Grace, we're coming up on maybe 75 years here pretty soon. And there's different dynamics with an established history to starting from new. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to keep myself from maybe running in that direction. But there's differences of dynamics. There's pros and cons to that. Maybe we can discuss that another time. But I think it's also interesting that, your path to the podcast this morning in your ministry, you have 2 individuals who just stop to care and to ask them provocative, sometimes tough questions, whether that's the guy at school, that God used to just kind of turn a direction around. And then it's Dan Simmons.
Yeah.
Have you done this? I think what a neat testimony to the body of Christ and coming alongside each other and a willingness just to, hey, can I ask you some questions just about your walk with the Lord? And have you ever thought about this? You know, I think it's a really cool.
Let me mention to you real quick the first one. My 8th grade Sunday school teacher was teaching 3 or 4 boys. He was a geologist. He was boring as could be. I mean, he's a geologist.
Yeah.
But he showed an interest in us.
Yeah.
And he would take us hiking in the mountains, and he would just talk about Jesus. And so I got from that a love for hiking, a love for the mountains, but I also caught from him an interest in God's Word.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that because it doesn't matter. It's not a personality type.
Mm-hmm.
It is just an intentional choice to invest in somebody else's life.
Yep.
And who knows how God's going to use that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Want to get to our topic at hand, and thought it's just fitting as we talk about kind of here's Ohio kind of closing out a lot of their health orders and people getting back to normal, which is a good thing, a negative thing, perhaps even. And we talked about, all right, let's not waste COVID. God's not going to waste the coronavirus. Let's not waste it as a church, as individuals. And so here we are on the other side of it, a year and too many months along after the beginning. What are some lessons that we've learned? And we also want our people just to be perhaps reflecting on. And so we've each come up with at least 3, and we'll just kind of work our way around talking about them. Brian, you're our guest, man. We'll let you start with number 1 for you. What's a lesson?
So for me, an element of this is really personal, and I thought I'd share this one first. As you know, my dad passed away from COVID. And so he passed away in December. My dad was just shy of 82, but very healthy. No major health complications or anything like that. And got sick a few days after Thanksgiving. About a week later, he was on a ventilator, and about a week later, he was with Jesus. And so for me, the personal lesson that I walked away with is that life is short and unpredictable. In my dad's case, he was 82. His life was so short, but there's an unpredictability to life. We didn't know that was coming. And so you want to be thinking about how you're living your life. You want to be thinking about the legacy you're leaving with your life. And I think that as we went through COVID, we saw people actually thinking about that an element of that unpredictability. They were afraid that, do I go to this environment? Do I interact with people? Do I hibernate in my house? Do I lock myself down? What do I do? And ultimately, we end up putting ourselves in God's hand because He's sovereign. I'm just about to launch into the last half of Daniel with our church, and we're talking about that element of God's sovereignty, and He's in control, and that's a great thing to know and rest in. So from His perspective, yeah, everything's under control. He knows what He's doing. From my perspective, I live in utter chaos. I don't know what's going on in my world, right? And so life is unpredictable, and it is short. And it's a reminder that, obviously, if you don't know Christ, life's short. You need to think about that. If you do know Christ, you only have so much time to make impact. Yeah. So what are you going to do with it? And I hope that we talked about this early on. Are you going to waste this opportunity? Are you going to internalize it? Are you going to choose to live in fellowship with Christ, in joy with Christ, in journey with Christ? Or are you going to live in selfish isolation? And so I guess that's my first lesson. Life is short. It's unpredictable. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to live?
It was interesting to watch how it certainly began as something, COVID was something that was elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it slowly began to impact people directly. It just took a little time.
Here's the crazy thing. So of those 4 families that started New Community, 3 of us lost dads during COVID. Two of them from COVID, one wasn't. And another got very ill. we were all there in the same place
there, yeah.
within
Wow.
2 months of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy? But again, it's just that reminder that
Yeah, yeah.
So, so my first lesson that came to mind was that technology is great, but it cannot replace human interaction. Whether it was like for us as a family, seeing our kids completing their schooling virtually, and just the lack that was there, and the limitations, I should say, not the lack. That was the limitations of technology there, and then the same thing as we are meeting virtually, and then coming back to in-person gatherings and seeing everyone on a Sunday morning. There's no comparison. Like, so technology is great, but it can't fulfill all of our needs.
It was one of those like good but bad things.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost
Yeah.
like COVID just kind of put on the stage for everybody to see the benefit of all what technology can bring, but at the same time, it highlighted the how it falls short
Mm-hmm.
in human interaction. It's like, okay, wow, a Zoom meeting is great. I remember was it the Good Friday service that we did?
So
I mean, that
mention that
was
later.
like, that was emotional.
Yeah.
Finally,
that was the first time we saw everyone's faces on the
That's
same
right.
screen.
And it was-
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah,
and
it was
how that was an
crazy.
emotional experience.
But but it still fell short.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's you're going to say something. I think.
Well, I was just going to say, the body matters to the head,
Yeah.
and so as Christ sees his body, he cares about his body and how that body interacts.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right, Ryan. You can't substitute the human interaction. As great as technology is, you just can't substitute that. And there's something that happens when the body's together. There's something. How many times does somebody leave your service and it isn't something that you preached that changed their heart or changed their life? It's something that somebody said to them in the hallway.
Right.
It's a hug they got when they dropped off their kid in the nursery and they just had a rough week.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. And so it's tragic to me when elements of the body say, because you talked about the catch-22 of this, that, you know what, being home in my pajamas is okay. I can watch this from my sofa and no, you don't. You miss out on so much that the body's all about. And it isn't a substitute.
Yep.
And it's intangible sometimes.
Yes.
Just like you can't put your finger on it, that in-person dynamic. Sometimes that dynamic can be negative,
Sure.
but when there's health there and there's a togetherness, like you can't put your finger on it, you can't describe it, but there's an energy,
Yes.
I think, that is rejuvenating sometimes.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
For myself, the first lesson that I learned, or I guess relearned, or was reminded, is that God is always faithful. God is always faithful. Why do I say that? Because this past year for myself has been absolutely insane. I anticipated graduating from college last spring, but I ended up graduating a semester early. Started working. I delivered groceries. Called a thing called Shipt. Highly recommend it if you're looking for something to do like part time. It works out pretty good. But I ended up doing that and was already engaged to Kara. I had several different churches and organizations pursuing me for full-time positions of some aspect. And I don't know, COVID hit and it was just utter chaos. A lot of decisions to make at 23. But the Lord was faithful through and through and ended up here at Grace, even though the voting took a long time. And that was a whole headache and discouragement, but the Lord had his way. When I got here last June, we had to find an apartment in less than like a week. That was crazy. We ended up finding one. The Lord provided in that manner. Our wedding venue, for example, was changed because our original wedding venue was owned by the local government and they had shut it down. So our new wedding venue was actually significantly better. Like it was like a mansion. It was sick. It was absolutely sick. So the Lord provided in that manner. The opportunity to even coach baseball here in Westlake during the pandemic was a blessing too. But so just so many things. I was just reminded of God's faithfulness. A lot of people have asked me, how does it feel to start a job during COVID-19, or how does it feel to start ministry in COVID-19? I don't know, because I don't know how it is without COVID-19.
Outside, yeah.
So outside of COVID-19. So we'll see. But I'm excited for I feel like the year I've been here, so much has already been accomplished. So I'm excited for COVID-19 to be like pulled back, and so for more things to be accomplished. But yeah, God is always faithful. That was the lesson that I learned, or relearned.
Yeah. You think about everything that was forced to change
Yeah.
in your life, everybody's lives.
Yeah.
The aspect of the unknown, what's going to happen, you're kind of forced to fall back on. Okay, God, you've got to keep caring and providing for these things. So, I think the first lesson for me is, as I was reflecting on this, just the importance of rest. One of the dynamics, and I know everybody's experience with it was different. For some people, last March, April, May, June were just completely hectic with, especially if you have young kids, 2 working parents, working from home, and now you got to help your kids teaching. But there was also quite a bit that just quit happening, whether that was all the different extra activities that you were doing, whether it be, sports or vacations even, or other things, everything that would take up a lot of time. Your lives were just really kind of narrowed in on the most important, streamlined, yeah, those important things. You had your job and the kids' school, but you didn't have, all the extra stuff. And it really started hitting me yesterday at a busy day. Took Colin down for his orientation for college. Got back real quick. Katie had kind of a summer league basketball for the high school. And then at that, one of the parents, some of the girls left midway through their games to go to softball that they had. And then there was open gym volleyball in the evening for the school. And I was just, we're so happy for we're getting back to normal, but what we're getting back to is just that crazy busyness again. And one of the lessons I think was important is just the importance of being able to stop doing all of that. And I think the importance of saying no and having those moments of rest. Here's Jesus getting away from everything just to have his time with the Lord, his Father. And our lives are so busy that we end up sacrificing on that or minimizing that, stealing that kind of time. And that's super important time that I think we need to rejuvenate, to kind of refresh our own hearts and souls. But also I think it's important time for just evaluating, I think as a church, we were able to take the time and just evaluate, our children's ministry in particular and how that's going to be different come fall. But if we're just driven and have no kind of boundary in our times or no margin in our lives that we take, then we end up not evaluating. Mm-hmm. And then we just keep doing the same thing and we get in those ruts. So I think that importance of rest, and I think, I encourage all of our families out there to be willing to say no, protect those margins, protect those boundaries. So
one of the things, Steve, that we challenged, I think it might have been week 1, when we talked about this idea of our lives being streamlined, is what are you going to fill that space with? Is it just going to be Netflix? What are you going to do with it? And I think, just an observation, I saw both positives and negatives. I saw that in my own life too, where, it was like, okay, I have this space. I didn't have it before. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
am I going to rest? Am I going to stop and listen to God's voice, or am I just going to fill it with something else? And we are so driven by that as a culture to just replace, drop something new in there. And I hope just for both of our churches that we don't just go back to the grind of activity, but that we really do walk away from COVID with an understanding that sometimes more is less.
Amen.
Good. What's your second one?
This is just a little one, but one of the things that I think I learned is that the church is more adaptable than you think, right?
And that's a church that's had to adapt.
Yeah, isn't that
your
weird?
DNA.
Yeah, it's built into us. I've always
It's the
said
A in your DNA is adapt, right?
right. Yeah, exactly. I've always said that we're flexible and it's a strength, and okay, I think it still is, but it was harder to adapt than we expected, and there were things that we didn't want to adapt to. And so I was thinking about, okay, what are the things that we had to adapt? Well, obviously, there's a whole live streaming. We did that with you guys for a while, and then the month of May, after our final service together, we were using an iPhone. That was our camera and audio, and it was like as close to me as that camera is right there, and it was kind of crazy, And then we branched out, went to a camcorder, and then we branched out from that. We actually went to a decent camera, and our sound and tech guys were trying to figure all this out, and we had some good things and we had some crazy things, and so there was that. And then there's the adaptation of, okay, how are you going to do ministry? Like, what does social distance ministry look like? And we're in a situation where our environment, a lot of it was controlled by the school we were in it's a private school, but they have their own sort of rules and regulations. So we had to adapt to their expectations. So, what's kids ministry look like once we got that back online? How do you do communion in COVID? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think we're all happy to get rid of those
Prepackaged.
Those were the worst.
prepackaged,
Yeah.
Those were the
net
worst.
styrofoam tasting wafers.
Yeah. But there's so much that we had to figure out and adapt. And some of it I think we did pretty well, and other things I think, well, okay, if I could do it over again, I'd probably do it differently.
Could have gone better.
Yeah, exactly. But you figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that just because you have COVID doesn't mean God isn't still working in lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And both of our churches saw people that came to faith during COVID. How awesome is that?
Yeah,
Amen.
that's praise. That's good.
So my second, I think will probably overlap with some of yours, but it was just the whole pandemic, everything just reemphasized the need for grace amongst one another and to people we don't know. I think a lot of, even like now as we're recording this, we're seeing issues with people in restaurants where they're getting frustrated because things are taking longer than they used to. And well, just that need for continual grace for those around us because they're working short staffed, they're working long hours, they're all these different scenarios. We never know the full story of what's going on in someone else's life, and just having that love and that grace for them, I just think has been kind of brought back to the surface for me.
Yeah, I am super proud of our people here at Grace, just in their adaptability. And I think in the changes, to being online, to doing the Zoom, even though I don't know that anybody enjoys doing that, to, all right, we're going to do 2 services, we're going to have these protocols, to, we're going to start our services at 9 and, what was it? It was 9
and 11 when
9
we
and
first
11.
started. And we sat around for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
and
then we're
like,
going to change it to 9 to 10:30. So it was just change after change after change. It was adjusting, and
I didn't hear much grumbling.
No.
Everyone seemed to roll with it pretty well.
Yep.
So we appreciated that.
And I think there's grace too with, there are a lot of strong opinions related
Oh, absolutely.
to issues with
Absolutely.
COVID,
Yeah.
right? The whole spectrum.
Yep.
And they exist in the church and they exist outside the
Mhm.
church. But one of the things I prayed throughout the entire time was that God would protect the unity
Amen.
of his church. And I echo what you said, Steve. I saw a lot of that grace and love shared in the body, and patience. And I think that that's just something that we have to exercise. And what a good reminder it is that isn't, if it's not COVID, it's something else.
Mm-hmm.
And God calls us to something higher than we often will settle for.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, so the second lesson I had was, it kind of goes off of God is always faithful, but I am not in control, or we are not in control. I think it was just a great reminder to us, even while COVID was happening, even after the fact, that we're not in control. I remember I got COVID in December, remember that? And I was messaging Pastor Steve, and I was going to come that Sunday, and he's like, "No, you probably shouldn't." I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." and I was out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I felt horrible, man. I had a fever for 10 days, and I was like, I'm 23 at the time, and I was like, this should not be happening, you know? And so it was just a great reminder the Lord used just to be like, you're not in control.
Yep.
I'm the one who's in control. And so that was the second lesson I learned, was we're not in control. I feel like a lot of people learned that the course of this last year, is that they're not in control.
Yeah, we tend to feel safe when we're in control.
Yeah, for sure. Comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was 2 whole weeks of ministry that
Yeah.
you weren't able to kind of step into.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. And I almost missed my best friend's wedding.
Yeah.
But thankfully I made it down to Florida for that.
Yeah.
So
I think the second lesson for me was just becoming all things for all people. I like how Paul there in 2 Corinthians is just talking about, for the sake of the gospel, I'll become all things to all people, that I can just win some. And thinking about the mask issue, that spectrum of positions, and that mindset of, all right, as a church, but I think also as individuals, what's expendable, or in terms of what do we need to have in an open hand and what do we need to have in a closed hand? What's expendable, what isn't expendable, both individually, corporately as a church, and especially, in walking through this mask issue, I think really kind of brought that type of thinking to the table, that I got to think about, here's an expectation put on me in order to serve other people. Am I willing to set aside in order to serve? Not necessarily do I agree with it, or even do I think it's effective,
Right.
but for the sake of unity, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of ministry, what am I willing to let go of in order to see this move forward? Because I think, in the near future, we're going to have more and more of that, but in issues that are not open-handed, but are issues that are in closed hands.
Right.
And are we ready to think through these things? That whole issue really just drives us to how much of this is a self-orientedness, a self-centeredness, and I know it's not just boiled down, simplified to that, because it's a very complex issue. I get it. And there's so many, but nonetheless, I think a lot of it comes down to, what am I willing to give up in order to serve you and to serve the body of Christ and for the gospel's sake? Because, we had people coming into our services on both ends of the spectrum as guests. And, one lady is, why aren't these people wearing guests? Other are wearing masks. And others real hesitant, but they're here wearing a mask, and it was really important. And both of those are opportunities to have the heart and the mind of Christ. Some of those things that are closed-handed, obviously, is the gospel, the body life, that dynamic and the importance and centrality of it, the Great Commission. All of these things were really forced as individuals, but as churches, to what is most important and what is fringe important. and those things that are on the fringe and on the outside, on the edge, am I willing to become all things for all people through that? I think that was a good thing and a healthy thing. And it's something we're going to have to remember, I think, moving into the future.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what's your third one, Brian?
My third one is God doesn't stop with COVID. Why should we? And, you know, you hear at Grace talk about being 24/7 worshipers. That we're worshipers, we're the church, whether we are in the building or we're home, wherever we are, we're the church. We function as the church. We function as followers of Jesus. And so, whether something happens and what we think church should look like doesn't look like church, doesn't mean we stop being and functioning as the church. Because frankly, if we're honest about it, very little that we do on Sunday looks like acts, right? Time, culture, all those things interact with that. And so, you know, it's my job as a follower of Jesus in whatever situation I'm in to continue to be an active follower of Jesus. And one of the things that I am concerned about, because we know there is a statistical segment of the church at large, they're saying as much as 20%, that won't return. What does that say, right? That there's an element of the larger body of Christ that won't come back, that they're content to, and I'm not saying, here's the scary thing, it's not that they're watching from home. They're completely disconnected.
Right.
And so, you know, what does that say about North American Christianity? And I think that should be a concern for us coming out of COVID, right? And so we have this responsibility, I think, as leaders, as pastors, to lead our church in such a way that that people see that we are 24/7, we're engaged for the cause of Christ, and come what may, we're still the church. We don't stop.
Mm-hmm.
God didn't stop. He doesn't stop. He's still sovereign. He's in control, just as Dre was talking about. And we can rest in that. Now let's march forward and do what he has for us to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joy to have our services again. This past Sunday was our second time all in, everybody one service. But I think there's also that going back to, all right, being a Christian means I go to church on Sunday.
Yep.
And I've gone, and the rest of the week there's a disconnect. And it's, if I'm hearing you right, I think it goes beyond that.
Yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
just because churches open back up, and you can go to church on Sundays, doesn't mean it ends with that responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
Calling in.
Yeah. I'm at this 24/7.
That's right.
And so hopefully the decentralization of the church
Continues.
in that sense continues.
Yes.
And then the centralization of the church coming together on Sunday to be fueled and sent out again
Yep.
continues. We need
Yeah.
both,
Yes.
Right.
right? We need both. And so, yeah, it's so important.
So the next one I had was that we shouldn't take the common for granted. Just thinking how, like we mentioned earlier, when we did that Good Friday service on Zoom, and how you and I, Pastor Steve and I, had talked, and how it was emotional to see all these faces. And you know, the other thought I had was how, you know, how many people said, you know, see you next week on March 5th last year, and that really became see you in 2, 3, 4 months, a year
Yeah.
plus, or for some people never again. And just how easy it is to take what we do regularly for granted, and just to kind of see past that and get back into the, you know, seeing everything in thanks. And that, you know, we have time together on a Sunday, we have time together through the week. We can do this, what we're doing right now, again, you know, all of this, you know, just less for granted and more with thanks.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that could be a whole nother discussion of what are the things that COVID has shown us that we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Health, people, parents. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
What's your third one, buddy?
My third one, I feel like we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I said relationships matter. Relationships matter. Even Brian, with you talking about your father, and I know that we knew of families that had lost loved ones. So just the fact that we need to continue to remind ourselves that relationships matter, and that really life is relationships. And I think that COVID has taught us that we can't take relationships for granted. So,
I think even just relationships in our own
families.
families, just like whether it's parents with children, children with parents. I mean, all of these parents then having to step in and help their kids with their education.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a sense of, wow, I am responsible for their education. I don't know. Maybe that's a touchy thing, but I think I take for granted that responsibility. But parents with their kids is, how many parents have spent more time with their kids over the last year than prior?
How many more meals have been had as a family in the last year than the years before?
Yep.
That was a big difference for us, was just the number of meals where you're sitting at the table together.
Yep.
And I think even families that are distanced, who now are using things like FaceTime that they maybe weren't using before,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
Zoom, and they are interacting more with extended family
Mhm.
that they had before. So that's another benefit.
Yeah.
I know we were able to engage more with our street. There was kind of born out of COVID just our specific streets Facebook page, where it became hey, if you need anything, let us know. We're shopping on these days, so if you need anything from the grocery store, you need anything from here, like if you're at risk, let us know. We'll get it for you. We'll drop it off on your porch.
Yeah.
And just those relationships that
New ways to serve.
absolutely. And it was just relationships that really didn't exist. You said hi to the person on the way by because they were sitting in their front, on the front porch as you walk the dog, but that was it. And so now we know their names, we know kind of some of their story, it's just getting to know neighbors because they became more of a bigger chunk of your world, if you will,
And now it's a challenge then
to maintain it.
to maintain that.
And
because the reason for it's gone.
right.
COVID, everybody can go to the store, everybody can do what they want. But then all of those connections, I
Well,
think that's a
And all the busyness.
yes.
Yes,
That,
and that's
that
back.
shut it down.
Crowd that out. That's right.
Yeah.
So, third one for me is just how ugly complaining is, and how refreshing grace and patience are or
Yeah.
is. Not sure where. I think it was a podcast I was listening to that was addressing. They're walking through Exodus and the complaining that the Israelites were
The
doing,
grumbling.
and complaining, and at the heart of the grumbling and complaining for them is that they were testing God. That they, at the heart of it, it wasn't just asking God a question or wondering. I mean, it was questioning His intentions, His ability, His purposes, and His reasons, and there so much complaining was just going on. You see a lot of it in social media, and it's just nobody looks good when they're complaining, and there's just an ugliness to it, but there's an opposite beauty to the grace and the patience, and whether it was out of just our trust in a faithful God and a sovereign God, or it was just simply, listen, I understand the difficulty. There's stories behind other people and what's going on. We distrust our governing leaders, whatever it is, but just then the choice to say, I'm going to be patient with these people. I'm going to be gracious. That if that's something we can kind of maintain, and especially maybe make that choice of, I'm not going to use social media to complain. I'm not going to have that kind of presence. This is what I'm not going to be known for this. I'm going to be known as a person who's going to show grace and understanding and patience with other people. And I think all of us can look at times in our lives, it's when people are gracious and patient that it fuels people. Complaining just like sucks the life out of people and out of a room. And it just how ugly complaining is and how refreshing, fueling grace and patience are. So
It's like the impact that you can have when you finally get to the front of the BMV line. And you get the person that's been dealing with cranky people all day long. It's the end of the
Absolutely.
day, and you're actually kind to them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can watch the change.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can see it.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, all right. I think there's a lot here to think about. We could probably keep going on and on. Brian, it's just been a joy, obviously, in our partnership, working with you guys, ministering with you guys, and it's not going to end. We just did Top Golf with each other.
We did.
We'll keep
It was
doing
fun.
it. It was a lot of fun. And but we want to finish with you as a guest, like we do with all of our guests, with the shotgun questions.
Okay.
We didn't give those beforehand, so it's off the top of your head.
All right.
What's your favorite ice cream at Mitchell's?
Oh, double chocolate chunk.
All right. Favorite menu item at Chipotle?
Burrito carnitas.
All
Excellent
right.
choice.
The carnitas.
Excellent choice.
What's your favorite book outside of the Bible? Or perhaps it's just what book are you reading right now?
Well, just fun reading. I read David Baldacci. Suspense, kind of thriller kind of stuff. And I've got like 5 or 6 different stuff going, just kind of ministry stuff. I'm reading a lot of stuff on discipleship right now.
Good. What's your favorite book of the Bible?
Oh, that's rough. Right up there is First Peter.
Yeah, that's a good book. Yeah. What's your favorite movie? What's the movie that you can watch over and over and over? If it comes on TV, you stop and watch it.
Well, I grew up in the Star Wars generation, so Star Wars movies are usually pretty high on the list for me. But I'd have to think about that. I don't know. I don't know what would be my favorite all-time movie. I don't know.
All right.
Mm.
We'll let him off the hook.
Yeah.
Favorite person in the Bible, other than Jesus?
Favorite person in the Bible, one of them's Daniel.
Yeah, because you're studying right now.
Yeah, but he just is amazing to me.
Yep. Favorite restaurant to eat in Cleveland?
Favorite restaurant? Sharon and I are kind of suckers for Wink and Lizard.
Ah, interesting. Favorite, what would be your dream car?
Ooh, dream car. Not a car. It would be a 24-foot, 4-wheel drive motorhome, get off road, where I can be out for about 5 days off the grid.
Very good. Nice. We should say dream vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be one of
I
those.
suppose.
Your vacation spot?
One of them.
It's going to be Hawaii, though, I imagine. Right?
No. Well, so far, one of our favorite, honestly, is Yosemite National Park.
Yeah. Favorite cartoon growing up?
Oh, favorite cartoon. Probably Looney Tunes.
Yep.
It's the second one we've gotten.
Yeah. You a Starbucks guy or Dunkin' guy?
Not a fan of coffee, so I'm Dunkin' because I can get donuts.
There you go. Michigan or Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Just stop there.
Oh yeah.
Spring or fall?
Late spring.
Yep. Late spring. And I know how you're answering this one, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yep. So,
And Red Sox.
dogs and Red Sox.
You didn't throw that on there, but I want to make
Oh,
sure.
but you had to put it in there? Good.
Yes.
All right. Brian, again, thank you for joining
You're
us.
welcome.
Yeah,
and
Thank you for inviting me.
We'll keep the conversation going. We'll have you on again.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Let's call it a wrap.
All right.
God bless. See you next episode.